All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.
Welcome, everybody. I did some Facebook inviting to make sure everyone watches our amazing Ways and Means meeting, so there might be some fellow citizens watching at home tonight. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 5:33 p.m. This is Ways and Means Committee Fiscal Year 2019 Budget Discussions meetings. This is our second. Today is Tuesday, April 17th, 2018. We're at GCTV 15, 393 Main Street, 3rd floor, here in Greenfield. Can everybody hear me okay? Wonderful. This meeting is being recorded, videotaped, and broadcasted. If any other persons present are doing the same, please notify me at this time. Seeing none, we'll move towards our roll call. Councilor Alice. Councilor Mayo?
Here.
Councilor Pyfrom?
Here.
And Councilor Sund?
Here.
Everybody's here. Wonderful. There's no approval of minutes tonight. There's no public hearing tonight. There are no motions tonight. Basically, we are just here to continue discussing the budget. And tonight we're talking and listening about public safety. And we will be hearing the fire department portion of our budget first. Just because I sympathize with you coming off of that myself. And if we can find it now, we have our beautiful budget books. Page 100. All right. And so really this is just an open forum like discussion. So if you want to come join us at the table, really just same as last year, high overview, and then if there's any questions, we can open after that.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to discuss my budget. Just a couple highlights from where we are from last year. Our instructions when we built in the budget was to level fund plus contractual steps. And so that's how I built the budget out. The big difference between last year's budget is we're going to be down a day staff member. We used to have a chief, a deputy chief, and a captain on days. Because of tight budgets, I had to go down to 2 captains instead of a deputy chief. And this past fiscal year, one of the captains returned to shift, and we haven't filled that position. So that's the biggest difference between this year and last year. I worked within the guidelines that were given by the mayor and tried to restore some money in the operating side and certain line items that I knew were going to come up short, and historically have been short the last 4 or 5 years. So I tried to address some of those concerns, but we're still going to be a little short in some of those categories. We are going to be facing some staffing difficulties starting at the end of this month and going through probably mid-July. I have 4 firefighters that will be going out on leave, family medical leave, and then I have another firefighter that is on long-term IOD leave. So about close to 25% of my existing staff is going to be disappearing on me in a couple weeks. So it's going to be a challenge, but we will make it through. And so I'd be happy to answer any specific questions that anybody has.
Councilor Mayo.
Can you just dovetailing on what you just said about dealing with staff decreases 25%? That's a significant amount. Can you give a little bit more details on how you anticipate dealing with that? Sure.
So we have we'll work closely with the mayor's office and the collective bargaining unit to go into. I don't think we'll be there at an emergency staffing level, but we have plans if that happens. I will have to move firefighters, transfer firefighters around through the department to make sure that I have an equal amount of firefighters assigned to each shift, and we'll have to fill with overtime. There will be I'm anticipating a significant increase in overtime.
And that's not sorry. As a kind of a follow-up. Is that done through the collective bargaining process, or is that just you have the staff that you have and you'll divvy up as possible?
So there are certain rules within the collective bargaining agreement, but primarily it's management's rights.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Councilor Ellis?
I have one. It's more geared towards capital. But it sort of comes back around to operating. How is the vehicle situation?
Great question. So there are, our apparatus has a certain lifespan, and we're coming to the end of a lot of the apparatus. And so I've done initial calculations and have determined that we have within the next 4 to 5 years roughly $3 to $3.5 million worth of equipment that should be strongly considered replacement. And so we've been working on plans with the mayor's office to try to come up with a solution to that. We've got some creative ideas as we move forward. And so there's more to come on that, but there's a lot coming down the pike if we're going to stay with any type of a replacement plan.
Okay.
And you will have the opportunity, I know you're not feeling well, but I know tomorrow I've given you the opportunity to come and speak to your budget for capital, even though it wasn't put forward to us, so we can learn more about what that need is.
Sure.
But it's totally up to how you're feeling.
Sure. I mean, I'd be happy to talk about it now or tomorrow, whatever's more appropriate.
I mean, I don't know if it's fine by me, so you don't have to come back again tomorrow. Although that's not really what we're talking about tonight, but we don't have to vote on anything tomorrow for you.
Okay.
So that's fine too if you wanted to explore the vehicle situation further.
Sure. So I'll dive into it a little bit. So I have for a couple years have worked on a solution to try to mitigate or minimize the financial impact to the city with a replacement plan. And so, like I said, we are working with the mayor's office to try to come up with a solution to some of the problem. And so one of the biggest things is that we're going to look at replacing several vehicles with less vehicles. Which, for example, we have a pumper and a rescue. They each do 2 different missions within the department. They're 2 very large trucks. It's my plan down the road to combine both of those trucks into one truck. And so it would be a little bit bigger of a pumper than we're used to, but it would do dual features. And by doing that, we save the cost of a truck. And then there's the other part of that is an additional pump replacing it with a mini pumper. which goes from a $620,000 truck to about a $260,000 truck. Still gives us the same capabilities that we need. It still works with our ISO rating, and so we're working out those details. We also have a third-party evaluation coming in to take a look specifically at the fire department fleet. That should be done in May, and I hope to have a comprehensive report from that study done in May.
We've had some issues with studies in the past for our vehicle fleet, so this study, not only, I think we did a vehicle study like a year or two ago, and they did a wonderful job of highlighting all of the fleets across many departments, but they never did the analysis of needs-based. Will your study show needs-based?
It will. It will base it not only on the community's needs, but also the ISO requirements. And this study is going to be a little bit different. They actually get in under, on top, around the truck, and they not only look at, future needs and replacement ideas, but they also look at the current needs and safety issues within the current apparatus that we have. And I've seen what they've done for the city of Pittsfield and about 6 or 8 other communities that I'm aware of where they've come in and they've done this. Southwick is another one. And the reports are pretty comprehensive, so I'm actually looking forward to it.
Great. Councilor Sund?
Yes, this is something different. This is on the building. What's the durability of the firehouse right now? Is it?
That's a great question. That's a great question, and it's there's a lot to that question. I will tell you the building was built in 1936, and it was not built for the current use that we have. The size trucks that we have to purchase have to be a certain size because they don't fit into the apparatus for it. We had an evaluation done probably 8 years ago about the apparatus floor. I think it's time that gets revisited. We've had some brickwork done this fiscal year. We had pieces of brick falling from the exterior of the building, and the mason that came in and did the work. Our parapet walls on the side of the buildings, they said that those need to be tear down and rebuilt. All the trim work needs to be done. Point is, there's a lot that needs to be done if we're going to stay in that building. It's been a great home for us. We love the home, but it's time to really consider finding something different.
Paula?
As far as brickwork, I know 100% about brickwork. Once they start falling, they don't bring themselves back, and it gets weaker every time you replace it.
Yeah, we have evidence on the second floor that water's starting to infiltrate in behind the brick. We've had engineers, environmental engineers in the building to make sure that we don't have a mold problem going on there, and so the air tested negative for that. But we are seeing some signs of water infiltration.
Thank you very much.
In terms of challenges, it seems like your budget is very close to being level. In terms of challenges, staffing, are there any other ways to resolve the staffing issues other than overtime? Is that becoming more expensive than perhaps just hiring on another team member? Or
so we've looked at this in years past, and I haven't done an in-depth study of it within the last year or two, but in years past when we were in a similar situation, we found that the cost to add an additional person to the group for the minimum shift staffing, which going from 4 to 5 has always been my goal. I've said it every time I've sat here, that my goal is to have a minimum of 5 on duty. There's 2 ways that we can do that. The one way is through overtime with the existing staff that we have, or with adding an additional firefighter to each of the shifts. The cost is roughly the same. back when we did it. I would have to redo it again, but the cost was about the same. Either you do it through overtime or you do it through hiring. There's advantages and disadvantages for both. Obviously, I will always advocate for more staffing. We are incredibly busy. When I first got on the department, I think I've said this every year I've come here. When I've got on the department, we were running about 800 calls a year, combined calls. We had 7 members on duty at all times. We would drop to a minimum of 5. We currently run about 2,700 calls a year, and we're doing it between 6 and 4 firefighters on duty. It's really, when we're working with that 4 firefighters, that is very challenging, because 4 firefighters does not permit us to handle multiple calls at the same time, where a 5th firefighter on a shift would. So, for example, our engine company is a 3-man engine company, and our second piece is a 2-man engine. So it's either 2 men on the ambulance, 2 men on the rescue, 2 men on the ladder, or 2 men on another engine. When we drop down to 4, that's just not permissible. The engine company is still, and will as for the foreseeable future, always be 3. There are certain standards, such as OSHA standards and NFPA standards, that dictate 2 in and 2 out, which means that for every time there is a structure fire and we're going interior, there has to be 2 men inside the building and two-person backup crew on the outside. Very difficult to do with 4 people. Sounds like you could do it, but an attack line really needs to be the whole company.
Especially if, in financial terms, they're basically even, and sounds like safety takes priority. So is that something you'd have to prepare for next year's budget in order to prepare to add somebody on, or how does that work for your department?
I certainly can come up with an in-depth analysis on the plans, but like I said, the instructions this year were for level funded plus contractual steps.
But it sounds like if overtime is just as expensive as adding somebody in the longer view, it sounds like it'd be pretty much level.
Yeah, we've made some big steps in lowering the overtime. And it was my hope that we would lower it enough where we could shift the overtime into putting shift strength on rather than the way that we cover right now. It just hasn't worked out. We're not quite there yet.
You're tired. Councilor Mayo.
When you're talking about overtime or hiring for overtime, how exactly are you calling officers that are, or not, fire personnel? Are they currently on scene, or are they people who are off duty that are being called in?
So if we have any type of an incident where it's going to tie up our resources for any, a long period of time, we recall firefighters. And that happens regularly. If we have a structure fire where it's any type of significance, we recall the whole department. The problem that we're facing, and it's a problem with, I think, fire service in general, but specifically in Franklin County, is we don't know what's coming in behind us. And so our on-duty staff really needs to be able to handle a multitude of the situation and not depend on people coming in behind us. We've had several fires where our mutual aid companies that we depend on, they do the best that they can, but there have been occasions where we haven't been able to get a truck from them. And so we've corrected that by, we have alarms that dictate what resources come in depending on this type of scenario. So when we strike what we call a second alarm in town, we've got a tremendous amount of mutual aid coming in. But you just never know when they're going to get there, if they're going to get there.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. We've made some significant progression in regards to assisting another agency. So Turner's Falls and Greenfield, Turner's being another career department, they have shortcomings in their call force, as I have shortcomings in my call force. And so we are really operating closely together, almost like it's a single department. And so simple things like ordering equipment and responses to fires have all changed. If I order a piece of rescue equipment for us, I call Turner's and I ask them, do you have this? And if they have it, then we're able to buy something different because we work so closely together. We're looking at simple things like our turnout gear, having a standard set of turnout gear between the two departments, so that when time comes and we have to order the turnout gear, we can keep it cheap or cheaper because we have a bigger quantity that we're ordering. So we're doing things like that. On the fire side, we now, if we have a fire in Greenfield, Turner's treats it as it's almost like a fire in Turner's. And so they're sending me more resources than they did in the past, and we're doing the same, and it's working out very well. But we have to do it based on the staffing and the situation that we're all in, not just Greenfield.
Hello?
Is that cooperation with Turner's dependent on who wins the football game?
No, we leave that part of it out of it.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Councilor Ellis?
Sorry, I may have missed an answer to the question that I'm going to ask. If I missed it, I'll just catch up with the tape. But the 1.691952, that represents how many, notwithstanding your issues with, or not issues, but your people on FMLA and the people that are going to be out for various reasons.
Sure.
What is the total body count that represents?
Sure. So the budget that has been approved and submitted is six firefighters assigned to 4 shifts, a captain assigned to the Fire Prevention Bureau, myself, and my administrative assistant, and there is a part-time clerk in next year's budget.
So 27 and a half, basically. Just that's the total number of bodies.
Sure.
Okay. I have one other question. It's a question I ask every year. No budget's ever exactly what you want.
Right.
What are the things that you had to cut back on specifically to get this budget to work that you would otherwise have wanted to have?
So I have line items of my ordinary operating budget, just about all of them.
Okay.
We, as I mentioned, this budget that we were in, we had some concerns going forward, so we had to remove one of the day staffers off, and it wasn't replaced for next year. So that's the biggest thing that we've made an alteration to.
Okay.
Councilor Mass?
Chief, you have personnel coming in on overtime, they're called in. Are those sometimes personnel who just got off of working a 24-hour shift?
Yes.
Do you think that they're at their peak efficiency when they've just gotten off of working at a 24-hour shift?
I think it can be challenging, but there's often alternatives.
If we did not have if we had additional staffing, the staffing levels that you would like to see for ordinary personnel, what would you anticipate the overtime budget would be?
The last time I did the in-depth analysis was about 200,000 to maintain 5 members working at a time. That's either through overtime or for hiring 4 additional firefighters on a shift. If I had 4 additional firefighters on a shift, based on contractual things and things like that, we would rarely go below the 5 members on a shift.
But you still need overtime for those kinds of situations, right? Do you have an estimate of how much that overtime would be?
I can tell you what we spent with the changes that we've made before we talk about that, and we spend on average, a second, I have it right here. We spend, since the changes that I've made, we spend roughly about $120,000 annually on overtime.
And what would we spend on overtime when we had staffing levels that were adequate?
It depends. If we had 7 members on a shift, then the impact on the overtime was small. If we didn't, Mayor Forgy tried for 1 year to increase the staffing, and it was a little over 200,000 in overtime.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Thank you very much. I feel
Great.
better. Get well soon. And next we'll hear police, and then dispatch, and then parking, and I believe it's all the same person. And those are on, let's see, where's
Police is on 96.
96.
Did you say 96?
96, yeah.
Welcome.
How are you?
Same thing, very open conversation. If you want to highlight some of, again, a level budget, so there isn't too much to talk about, but if you want to highlight some of, I guess, the important pieces of your budget, and then we can begin a discussion from there.
Well, I think you'll see that the increases are for the addition of the 2 school resource officer positions, and that's the addition to the salaries. Everything else has been contractual for the most part, with the exception of the vehicle lease, obviously. And that is to start a new lease, 3-year lease based on upcoming needs. So those are the major changes in the police budget, as well as an increase to the part-time line, which we've needed desperately this year due to a long-term absence.
I think we had a question from last week from you, Councilor Alice, if you wanted to follow up with the chief.
The extra 40, or the 42,000 more than last year for the cruiser leases, I understand how the leases work. I'm just curious, is that replacing current vehicles, or is that adding vehicles?
That's on a current replacement. So that's 3 vehicles in, technically 3 vehicles out if we have them. We had 1 vehicle obviously totaled, so that hasn't been replaced yet.
So we're not expanding the number of vehicles that we currently have, which is, I believe, 17 or 18?
It's somewhere right around that number, unless the 2 school resource officer positions are in there, and then I'll have to repurpose 2 that are coming out. They'll have to be retrofitted and outfitted.
Okay.
To accommodate juvenile.
So if for whatever reason those 2 positions are not approved or cut, then would that mean that the new lease would not need to be funded?
No, that's not true, because that's replacing 3 existing marked units that are already in the fleet. So these would pull out 3 vehicles, essentially 2 plus the one that was totaled, to replace those. So no, they're not. It doesn't change. That number doesn't change even if the SROs are not approved.
Okay.
I would just need to retrofit 2 of those that we're pulling offline. Would have to be, because I can't buy brand new vehicles, which would be even more than that. Obviously, I would have to find a way to retrofit to our needs. So.
Councilor Mass. Everyone's like.
On this issue of vehicle replacement, so you have 2 vehicles that are serviceable, other than the fact that they need to be outfitted for juveniles?
They're high mileage. They're going to be the original replacements from the first year I was here. So the mileage on them is exceptionally high.
But they're serviceable
For the fact they wouldn't be driving as much and they wouldn't be on a regular patrol, that's what I would have to use them for, yes.
And you indicated that you didn't anticipate making arrests, so why would those vehicles need to be retrofitted for juveniles?
Well, there's other things than just arrests. Transportation of juveniles, preferred method, not in a marked vehicle. You can't have a cage in the back. Those all have cages, full cages in the back, things like that.
So you would anticipate transporting juveniles for non-arrests by SROs?
We've done it for multiple reasons, yeah.
And currently, I understand that the practice is that the administration takes, the that the highest administrative officers take the newest vehicles and that the vehicles are passed down by some method of seniority, meaning that yourself as chief, deputy chief are taking the newest vehicles that are coming in. Is that correct?
The unmarked vehicles have been done that way, not the marked cars.
Is there a reason why we couldn't retrofit those vehicles that would otherwise be coming offline for yourself and the deputy chief, where you're not traveling as frequently on service calls?
We don't have any unmarks that are coming offline. The replacements aren't for any unmarked vehicles. These are 3 marked units that are going into replacement. There are no unmarked vehicles coming offline.
And your vehicles aren't marked?
Correct.
Talking about staffing, we were just talking with the police chief or the fire chief about his staffing. Can you talk a little bit more in terms of, I guess, how many units are out, how many units you wish you were out, and are we understaffing, overstaffing? I'm sure overstaffing isn't typically ever the issue.
No, that's never a problem. We're currently 34 full-time officers. That's probably the most solid we've been in years. The SROs would be 2 additional, obviously, on top of that, but my current staffing is 34 full-time.
Councilor Pyfrom.
So that's 34 officers. What are the full-time hours? Is that like a 32, 34, 36?
There's some officers that work 5 days on, 2 days off, and then there's the general patrol is 4 days on, 2 days off rotation.
Okay. And they're all full benefit, 34?
Those are 34 full-time, including myself, deputy chief.
Okay.
All supervisors.
Got it.
Yep. We have 3 civilian positions within the department as well.
Councilor Sund.
The resource officers, in your eyes, would you still recommend them, to help out the one we've got on hand?
Based on what has been brought to me and asked of me, yes. I mean, this was something I brought up and I talked about 4 years ago as kind of a wish list. When you ask what you wish you had, that would be one of the things, that would have been a wish list item. So now it's been asked of me, and that's what I've presented. So I've heard that, I've sat in, I've talked with administration, and there's been an expressed interest of having a presence outside of just the high school. And when that individual is not here, having adequate resources to cover those days where that individual isn't here. So the only way to do that is to add to that specific type of shift.
There have been some, I guess, the opposition to the SROs would say that the schools, the guidance counselors are at capacity. They can't do it anymore. We're laying teachers off. Why should we hire an SRO, not more teachers and not more guidance counselors? And what would your answer be to those who are opposed to SROs because of the lack of other, services within the school?
Certainly. The simple answer, I guess, is I'm not a school administrator and I'm not the superintendent, so I would never argue why they shouldn't. If that's what they feel they should have, then they should argue for that without any question. I would never say otherwise. This is what has been asked of me in my budget, and this is what I've come up with. Part of me, honestly, feels that if everybody got everything they were asking for, every dollar they were asking for, there wouldn't be any question at all about having additional police in schools. I really feel that this is almost, because now we're talking money, that it's becoming a negative connotation, and I don't agree with that.
Thank you. I think also if you could, we talked about it at our last, either the council meeting or Ways and Means, but we addressed other purposes of SROs other than just being a police presence on campus. You, as a former SRO, could you speak a little bit to the role? I had a really good experience with Chris Rowell, who is my SRO. I'm not trying to age him or myself. So if you could speak a little bit to what that role really is and help folks to understand that it's not just somebody with a gun in the school.
No, I mean, I'm not advocating to put more guns in the school. I think that kind of gets thrown in there as well. there's a lot of issues that are outside of the normal 7 to 3 that our current SRO has. I mean, we have 6 schools that are spread out, so this isn't 2 centralized places here like some places have. We have an SRO now that changes his schedule quite often to accommodate for various things that are going on at the school, whether it's trips, whether it's prom, whether it's activities that are outside of those normal hours. There's nothing to say what the schedules could be for these individuals. They could be helping out with a lot of different things. The school is utilized in many different ways. The parks are utilized in many different ways. There's a lot that goes on just outside of school hours with families and families that quite honestly require our assistance more than just being in school every day. I think it's important to look at those factors as well. I mean, we have a detective who handles juvenile concerns all week, and she's very busy, unfortunately. But there's a lot of other, ways to interact than just looking at it as a security force. I just don't look at it that way, I guess.
And then I think one other point that I've heard in the community, and this is, you probably don't know the data specifically, but it seems that there's a mindset that it's only behavioral towards the student body, this SRO, protecting the students from another student or a teacher or someone coming in. What can be said about an SRO's role in preventing someone from the outside public of causing an instance on campus? Because we're seeing more and more of that. We're seeing both sides, where it might be a student or a former student, or it might be somebody from the public. And when I have constituents coming to me, it seems like they're very focused on the idea that the SRO, again, arresting students in the student body, and that's what I just don't think is the common goal.
No, not at all. The last thing I want to do is arrest juveniles, students. But, like I said at the school committee, I can find you a study that says the SROs are great, and I can find you one that says they're terrible. And I can also find you the one I was looking at the other day that says that SROs tend to arrest less for certain charges because they know the student population, they know the teachers, they know the administration. So I can find you any study you want. Like I said, it's more of what we want. You can't, unfortunately, measure deterrence. Deterrence has got to be part of the thought. There's things that are coming out about people that would stay away from strong, if you want to call them strong sites as opposed to weak sites, which would mean that there's not somebody there that would prevent an act, so they go to the place that it's the weaker site. If we're going to use Parkland, we are going to pick the one scenario that everything went wrong. I mean, absolutely everything. And it was very unfortunate, but absolutely the scenario that everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. There's a lot of other scenarios out there that fortunately didn't go as bad, and there were some that went just as bad. And I think it's more just what we want as a city, not so much as what and periodically we can prove, because a lot of those numbers, like I said, are who's looking for them and what you're looking for.
Councilor Sund?
Yes, it kind of gets me why some schools don't feel anything can happen to their students. And the same schools that had these in Florida and Connecticut and California and some other places, they didn't think their students could have anything happen to them. And in my eyes, it's the students, I'd just soon have my grandkids taken care of and any other kids taken care of. And then just put it on the back table and see in Greenfield there's nothing's going to happen here in town. Would you, in your eyes, would you agree with that, what I said?
I mean, unfortunately, I can't guarantee anything. We can do the best we can to prevent and work with what we have. But again, I mean, we are talking about money at this point. So.
Councilor Mayo?
Getting back to the retrofitted vehicles, if the SRO component went through, talking about specifically, you said that those vehicles would need to be overhauled or revamped in some capacity. Can you give us a little bit more details as to, you said that, I think I overheard you saying that juveniles can't go where there's a caged.
Well, it's not that
element
they
to it?
can't, but if you're transporting for something that's non-arrestable,
Right.
you certainly don't want them in a cage.
So how would those vehicles be retrofitted?
They're about $1,700 per vehicle to do what is called a half cage, where it's a
Okay.
regular seat behind one seat. It's a half cage on the other side. The vehicles would be painted all one color. They would have magnetic signs on the side, so when they're outside of in normal kind of patrol from area to area, they would have magnetic signs on the side identifying as a Greenfield cruiser, but if need be, the magnetic sides could be pulled off, so it doesn't...
Is that 17,000 per vehicle?
No, 1,700, I'm sorry.
Oh, 1,700.
1,700 per
Okay.
vehicle, yeah, it was the quotes I got.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Then I guess I didn't actually get to see the school committee meeting where you spoke to this. Were there any other highlights that were brought up at that meeting that might be helpful to this committee?
Unfortunately, I needed to be out of there at 8:15. I didn't get on until 8:05.
Oh,
So I was fairly quick and pretty much covered what I did tonight.
Cool.
So.
Any other questions regarding police? Councilor Python.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
I just have a question on the repairs, maintenance, and computer line item. It looks like it's been holding steady for the last 3 years at $5,000. That's a request every year that you're asking for. Does that actually get used in 1 year, $5,000? Or it looks like it's for computers? Are they getting swapped out every year, or?
A lot of this ends up getting used when it comes to dispatch. The dispatch side doesn't really have any, if you look when we get to that, there really isn't any expense lines. The police department is inherently, we've always been responsible for dispatch. So some of that comes with the cost of things that go into that room. Additionally, IT has been very helpful over the last few years with the mayor kind of breaking them out into its own department. So we do rely on them for a lot more than we did before. But usually if something goes wrong, that money's gone real quick. And I think if you look over the last few years, that usually comes kind of towards the end of the year that we'll have to replace certain things. And most of it, I have to say, is dispatch at this point.
Okay.
About 4 years ago, the police department was completely redone, and we're in the process again through the IT to redo the department again.
The only reason why I asked that question is because I know computers' longevity could be a 4 to 5 year span, so I didn't know, with it holding at $5,000 for the last 3 years, where is that going? But if it's rolling over to dispatch so that you can allow newer equipment for the department, okay, I get that now. And then I have one more question on another line item.
Sure.
Was the range allowance? It looks like the range, same thing with the range allowance. It's been $4,800 for the last few years. Why such a jump to $5,100?
That's contractual, so it would be for the two additional.
For the two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Additional. It's $150 per officer.
Oh, okay.
It's just an additional.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the range allowance?
That's what they get for their practice, ammunition, things like that, for qualifying. They do qualify, the twice a year through the department, but they have the ability to obviously make sure they qualify. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding police? Councilor Mass?
Chief, also regarding parking enforcement, is that?
We were staying on police and then moving over.
I'll wait and know if you're concerned.
Seeing none for police, we will go over to dispatch first. Just keeping it in line, keeping it in order. Dispatch begins on page 102, 103. And we kind of began talking a little bit about dispatch in terms of computers, but if you wanted to highlight any budget items regarding dispatch, that'd be great.
I can just say on the ordinary expenses, the police department has traditionally just absorbed that year after year.
Yeah.
As you can see, the wages hasn't really changed a whole lot from last year to this year. There's obviously COLAs in there. contractual differences. So that's what's in there. The overtime is exceptionally low. We go over that every year religiously. It depends on part-time employee availability, which has been exceptionally limited in the last year because everybody right now was having struggles with hiring full-time dispatchers, and usually your per diems, your part-timers are full-time somewhere else. So we didn't really have a whole lot of part-time assistance, so the overtime is going to go over. I mean, there's no question about that. So we apply for the incentive grants every year. We've started taking, our dispatchers have started taking cell 911 calls this year. We have the next-gen system up and running now. So our support and incentive for training and that type of thing hopefully will continue to only go up. Again, we apply for that at the beginning of the year. We usually find out somewhere around September what our number happens to be. And that also goes to, those numbers also go to replacing equipment that we can't otherwise afford, essentially, or supplement, such as chairs and things of that nature that are quite expensive for
They
someone
really
that's
are.
sitting.
Renting chairs is expensive even.
For someone that's sitting most of their day, unfortunately. So.
In regards of, so like computers being budgeted over in police, is there anything else in dispatch that's kind of taken care of in the police budget?
The cleaning supplies, that's something that's constant. Obviously, you have a lot of folks just rotating through there, cleaning. Any paper supplies, any ink, any type of keyboards that are not. There's only certain things that are provided by State 911 for Next Gen 911. Anything that's ours, replacement for those speakers, things of that sense, that go frequently because they're using them constantly. Those are all covered by the police department. So essentially anything that room and those 10 folks need, we're covering it.
Could you talk a little bit about this Next Gen 911 and the State 911 and what the requirements we are presented with and kind of what that grant structure looks like?
Sure. Coming up next year, actually, to even apply for the grant, we're going to have to, as a town, make sure our GIS plan is submitted to the state annually, which is a change. Currently, if you go on to the system,
GIS
it's for essentially your mapping system for the town.
Okay.
So we stay up to date on who lives where, who owns what property, buildings and such. Because currently, if you go on it right now, the school still appears as if it was a hole in the ground and half built. So it hasn't been updated in a while. The state's going to require cities and towns to make sure they have that if they're going to apply for the continuing grant funding. There's two separate grant fundings that are done. There's a support and incentive, which, as I said, goes towards portions of salaries, things like that, and equipment. So you don't really know. You have to submit what you're looking for equipment to get approval for it. So you don't really know what your final number is for your support side when you have to, maybe have a big replacement year, which we did this year with equipment. And then there's the training and ed, which is why you see a zero line item for the training. Well, actually, you don't even see it anymore, but we pay for all the training out of the 911 training and incentive grant, as well as what the EMD costs to have another agency do the EMD medical side. And that comes out of that as well.
Nice.
So you don't see those numbers, unfortunately, but they do pay for
if they were there, they'd
mandatory
be
training.
zero.
Yes, they would be zero.
Wonderful. We like zeros. Any other questions? Councilor Mayo?
I just have, I hope it's a simple question. There's a line item here that I don't understand, and maybe you could elaborate. It says Holiday Dispatch Center, I think it is. Can you elaborate exactly what that is?
Holiday differential, is that what you're looking at?
No.
Underneath differential.
Underneath differential.
There's
For
shift
dispatch.
diff and then holiday. Is that what you're talking about?
Holiday Dispatch Center,
Yeah, Holiday Dispatch Center.
5152.
Yeah,
5152, is that the
5152.
number we're looking at?
Yeah, 5152.
All right, thanks. That's their holiday pay.
Okay, got it.
It's contractual, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I only have like half a letter in there, so.
Any other questions for dispatch? Seeing none, let's move on to parking.
Okay.
And that is on page 105. Thank you, Councilor Sund. Looks
Currently, we have 1 full-time parking enforcement and 3 part-time. Between anywhere from 2 of them work 18 to 19 hours a week on a regular basis, and the other, who's a new hire, is at 15 hours. That is the extent of the salary side. Is there a question on that?
Any other questions? I know you had a question about parking. I don't see any, so Councilor Mass.
Chief, last year we made a substantial increase in this line item for we anticipated that the courthouse would create chaos for parking downtown. Did that in fact happen?
Parking is always fluid. It's not done yet, I can tell you that. I mean,
So there was a spike in parking problems related to the courthouse?
I would say there was an issue with several areas. One, honestly, the major problem that we have is the Legion lot because of the construction going on there. We had a lot of issues with folks that didn't have enough space for permits that had permits for that lot, so that came up, but that's obviously a construction issue. We've had the construction on Hope Street. I think all of those things, and now obviously the garage.
But the enforcement, the parking enforcement, not parking problems with people who couldn't find a spot, that's a parking division. The parking enforcement itself, was there a spike in the need to enforce people in parking lots?
I would say probably. It'd be hard to judge on that because it wasn't done the same way before.
Did that stabilize after a period of education?
I would say no, because quite honestly, the courthouse instructions to everybody that comes there is not correct, and we've tried to work with them.
So what are we doing to stabilize the parking situation? It would seem to me that either if the spike is, if it was an anticipated spike because we knew there would be confusion, and that confusion hasn't faded away, we're not doing an adequate job of education.
That's why we're switching to the passport system. We're hoping that we're going away from what has been there and going to a whole new system, which will hopefully document and alleviate a lot of these issues that we've had so far.
Is that in our budget?
We've already gone to it.
Okay,
We're going
when will
to
that be implemented?
They're hoping we've been sending them all the information. They were hoping for an original rollout somewhere April to May with an education period to go on. That's part of the contract with them to help us educate. And then there's part of it's the e-paying and some of the issues that we've had. So.
And so when do you anticipate that the need for parking enforcement will stabilize and go back to prior levels?
Are you trying to ask me if you want to lay people off? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm asking when we'll have the same needs for enforcement that we had prior. We knew that there would be a spike because we knew there was going to be an education problem. Once people are educated, there should be less of a need because they now know and should obey the law generally.
Well, I mean, we
anticipate that spike to be over that hump.
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we had before 2 full-time people and a part-time person. We don't have 2 full-time anymore. We have 1 and 3 part-time people. So I'm not sure what you're asking. I can't predict what the spike will do.
So you anticipate people are going to continue to break the law at higher levels than they did in the past?
I'm not saying they're breaking the law at higher levels. I'm just saying there's parking issues that are confusing, and we continue to work on those. Part of working on that is figuring out what's broken. Well, the system we've been using for a long time is broken. So we're hoping that by switching to this new, where we have a lot more say, quite honestly, the system we have now is not user-friendly. It is not very accommodating to us as a city to determine how we want things. This new system is much more interactive and based on what we're looking for, not from what a system is telling us.
So
Mayor,
Just
Mayor
a
Murray.
point of clarification maybe is that the number of parking attendants, part-time and the single full-time, are covering a new geographical area on foot. When we went to the parking permits, expanded to the side streets, Prospect, Cleveland, Prospects, Franklin, Congress, and Park, and Church, that caused more of a foot race for the attendants to monitor. So I think that's part of why I wasn't expecting a chaos, although we're always expecting that when there's a new trend. It was to cover more territory as well as take care of the new changes or the changes that were occurring.
Let me ask my question in a
Can
different
we
way.
keep it kind of clean? Can I address you, please, Counselor Mass?
If I can ask my question
Yes.
in a different way to maybe get at the question I'm asking. We're issuing more parking tickets currently, correct?
I would have to go in and look. I'm not exactly sure what the ratio is.
Can you send us, please, the number of tickets that were issued? I know we're getting more revenue, so I presume more tickets are being issued. If we can see the 5-year trend on parking tickets issued, what I'd like to think is that, and maybe I could be wrong, that at some point, that will level off, and we won't continue to see more parking tickets issued because people will have been fully educated, and we'll continue to have violations at near the same rate.
That would be great. I can do that for you.
Counselor Piper.
I have a question. We had been operating without the latest part-time position that was hired for quite a few months until we filled that position. Were we losing money without the part-time that was just recently added back?
It was more that we weren't covering hours. So, I mean, as it is now, you're not getting a full Saturday per se, because that's more what I would say is it wasn't covering hours. So if your full-time person takes days off because they do get vacation, so do the part-time people.
Yeah.
That you were getting less coverage, so you could have a much more substantial amount of time where there's just nobody.
As opposed to having 2 full-timers that you had in the past?
Yeah, even the 2 full-timers, you still have to somehow manage to get Saturday in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easier to break up the part-time hours for folks and kind of balance it out that way.
Yeah, no.
So at times you're going to have more people out there, at times you're going to have less, but at least now it seems like there's coverage most days with 2 people somehow.
Okay.
This is a random question. Are they unionized, our
Yes.
parking staff? Counselor Alice.
I don't see any line item for training. How does the training work for the parking enforcement department?
They work with our lieutenant and the full-time parking enforcement person that's there. And basically it's a hands-on education training. There is a policy now in place.
That was my next question, so thank you.
Yep, yeah, that was part of what we had to do for accreditation as well. So we are constantly trying to work with other towns that have kind of had these issues already to try to get that. So I do rely on Amherst a lot, and I do rely on Northampton a lot. But yeah, there's certainly more procedure now, at least of I would say formalized than there was before.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
I think she likes Chief Haigh.
I think so too.
I see a smile.
Funny-looking guy. So.
Any other questions regarding parking? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
They gave it quiet for me. Thank you.
Very cute. Okay. Well, that concludes today's discussion regarding public safety. Does anyone else have perhaps questions that I can bring back and get some answers for?
I have a question on this. I don't know if tonight would be the night to ask it.
Why not?
I'm just curious. Mayor, or Elizabeth, we received this memo from you. Could you just explain what exactly you're asking us to do with this amendment?
Because this is probably for tomorrow, but since we got it today.
Well, this is on the actual budget, so it's not capital, it's just operating.
Oh.
Oh, as in council meeting, right, okay, sorry, I
Right.
thought you meant Ways and Means tomorrow, council, yes.
You want to wait until tomorrow, or you want me to? Yeah, why not today? Just so we understand and we can kind of.
So
We
when
only have you for so many more days.
I know.
I need to take all your knowledge.
So when we were building the budget, the SRO officer came in kind of on the late end of the budget process, and in our meeting, there was just a miscommunication. We inadvertently budgeted $101,000 extra dollars for the SRO officers. It was a innocent mistake, and as soon as we caught it, we brought it to your attention. So we're bringing forward to amend the budget down by that $101,000, and I sent the amendment out with the new budget numbers and even a recap sheet that shows you that the tax rate drops by a few cents per thousand based on that 101,000.
Councilor Ellis?
So, I'm just wondering the process to do that. If we amend the budget by 101,000, I believe that still leaves 101,000 on the table to be spent elsewhere. I don't think it just goes away. I think if we want the 101,000 to go away, we need to rescind this budget and forward a new one, because that money, I believe, will be spent if that's not done.
Well, we looked in what's happened in the past, and in 15 and 16, there were budget amendments that were sent in at the last minute where my predecessor had asked that you just make the amendment on the floor, and y'all did that without having to take away the budget that we presented and start all over. Because if we start all over, the clock starts ticking again from now. So really, you guys just need to approve the amendment so that you're now voting on the lowered budget.
Councilor Ellis?
I'm not trying to argue with you.
No, okay.
Can you get us the statute that says that that's how we can do it? Because I disagree. I don't think that that's true, and I just want to make sure that we're on the same page.
Okay, I'll check, because I checked with Deb today, and this is how she talked. So I'll
Well, it may have
check
been
with her
done in
tomorrow.
the past, but I'm not sure that
It was
had
done
to
correct.
be done that way,
Okay.
or that it
Yeah,
was
we'll
the way
double
that
check
should have
on
been
it.
done.
Councilor Mayo?
So just hope this is an easy question. When you talk about in your memo, proposed operating budget, is that the last line in the rundown here that we're subtracting the 101 from?
Yeah, well, I subtracted it in
Okay,
two places,
great.
from the wages and the police budget, and then, yes, the bottom line.
Okay,
by the
great. Thank you very much.
You're
We're
welcome.
only allowed to vote bottom line.
Okay,
So.
got it. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the sheet? Councilor Mass?
Simple. My understanding from the two previous years is that while similar motions to this.
I can't, sorry. Can you repeat that, please?
My understanding is in previous years, while similar motions like this came before the council. I don't need the microphone really, but if GCTV likes it. While similar motions like this came from the executive to the council before, there were also motions to add money to the school department budget that were defeated. That does not mean that that money couldn't be put into the school department budget just because it was done this way. And I think that the effect of this is that 101,000 will be available not to be added to any other line item, but potentially to the school department budget. And we should have a definitive answer if it's on the table or not before we have debate, so that the council's at least making a decision based on real numbers, regardless of what the executive wants to do, that we know what we can add and what we can add. So I'd ask you to get an opinion for the full council so that we know on the final budget night.
Well, it sounds like Director Braccia is going to handle that for us. Mayor Martin?
Thank you. Earlier today, I've requested from the town attorney three questions. One, what is the proper template for amending a budget submitted to a council that has not approved it? Two, what options does the council have for rejecting Amero's recommended amendment to a budget that's not yet approved? And three, what options are available to a city council to use the money, if any? So I think that would help us answer the questions.
I'm sorry, what was the first of the three questions?
First of the three is there a standard template for requesting an amendment to a budget that is submitted but not approved?
And he should have that answer to us relatively soon.
before the May meeting for sure, but as soon as we have it, we'll send it on.
Great. Sounds like we'll just wait for the attorney's guidance on that.
Are we good?
I think
Great.
so. This was a great meeting,
Thanks.
guys. For all of you, those of you watching at home, I think that unless anyone else has questions that we can carry forward to a future meeting, that will be today's discussion. If I can find, I have so many agendas in front of me right now. Other business, so our next meeting is tomorrow, and that's our regular scheduled Ways and Means meeting. Just as a reminder that we'll be here at 5:30 p.m. To begin our meeting, or at the high school at 5:30 p.m. to begin that meeting, just because any extra time during capital discussions is necessary time. But then our next meeting of budget discussions is Wednesday, April 25th, not Tuesday, but it's Wednesday, April 25th here at 5:30 p.m. And we will be discussing schools, both Greenfield and regional. That being said, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Meeting adjourned at 6:36 p.m. Thank you, folks.
All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.